Hi, my name is Stephanie. Thank you for joining us today for IT Service Catalog's 5 Principles for Success. Today, a few quick housekeeping notes before I start. Please note that you are muted for the duration of this event. You may ask questions using the Q&A panel, which you can access on the right side of your screen or from the Cisco WebEx Event Center toolbar along the top of your window. Also, all participants today will receive a link to download this recording as well as the slides. I hope to get that out to you by tomorrow. And one last note, we will be updating our website in the next day or so. So if you return to the website and things have moved a bit, if you have any problems finding anything that we covered today, please don't hesitate to email me. Again, we are all set to start IT Service Catalog's 5 Principles for Success. So I'm going to hand it over to Don Casson, CEO of Evergreen Systems.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Don Casson, CEO of Evergreen, and with me is Jeff Benedict, who heads up Evergreen's ITSM practice and is a terrific solutions architect as well. If you are new to our webinar series, welcome. If you're a past attendee, thanks for joining us again. Our goal is to share valuable information and insights you can use in your planning and activities today. Here's our agenda. As I began developing the material for this session, I realized that I really had 2 topics, each deserving of its own session, and to gloss over either one would be a mistake. So today, we're going to focus on the 5 principles of successful service catalogs, and I will create a follow-up webinar on the step-by-step approach to building a service catalog for January. As an added incentive for you to attend that, I will throw in the top 3 pitfalls and how to avoid them as part of that session. The question we'll explore today is, what are the 5 core principles of a successful service catalog? Beyond that, we'll briefly demonstrate our always evolving view of an advanced user-centric service catalog built on ServiceNow. Then we'll answer some questions if you have any. So let's take a quick look about Evergreen Systems. Evergreen is a US-based consulting firm, and we've worked with hundreds of mid-market and Fortune 1000 companies to improve their IT service management execution. We're a full lifecycle firm, or in the words of one of our customers, you have both process and technology in one company. We are one of the leading ServiceNow US partners and have over a decade of domain experience in each area of their ServiceNow portfolio. Big deal. For the most part, ITSM has been done the same old way for the past decade. Incident, problem, change, and a little knowledge. At the end of it, we may be running a little better, but so what? What about the customer? Are we really making a difference in their lives? Are we actually delivering them any more value? This old model is broken. We need to start with the customer. For the past 2 years at Evergreen, we've been working very hard on exactly this, focusing from the customer in rather than IT out. Our inspirations have been Apple, Amazon, and Google, to name a few. And what we see is that both the IT and customer's experience should evolve hand in hand from the start, not as an afterthought. On the left side of the slide, you can see IT maturing, going from silos of IT activities to delivering IT services, and then to being the engine behind the delivery of any services. On the right side, the customer experience is evolving as well, starting from pretty basic, maybe not very good, to being able to access a thoughtful and complete portfolio of IT services, and then to ultimately being empowered by a true digital workspace that can drive their productivity and creativity. Okay, so here's our first principle. And by the way, it is number 1 on purpose. If you do this and nothing else, you will still have a decent chance of success. So what is a service? An outcome that meets a customer's needs well enough to justify the purchase price. And the purchase price, it's not just money. It's the total investment the customer has to make to get the service, time, energy, and money. It also considers ease of use, quality, complexity, as the customer moves through the process, just like you do when you're the customer. For example, if you think about when you were trying to buy something online and the process was poor. Perhaps you were asked to go back and forth between screens, enter information you already entered, maybe you got dropped. If it became difficult, you probably abandoned the effort and left the shopping cart behind. As a matter of foundation for our conversation, creating customer-centric services rather than providing fragmented IT silo activities involves three constituencies: the customer, who cares about the customer experience, the provider, who cares about execution effectiveness, and the managers, who care about governance and accountability. Each one of these constituencies has to be involved and have their needs met to create a truly viable service. When creating new end-to-end services, it's very easy to get lost in the activity, so you don't see the forest for the trees. This is where core, simple design principles can help you steer a true course, and these are the kinds of things Evergreen uses when we work with our customers. For customer-centric, what is most critical is this: always design from the customer in rather than IT out. This is the highest value principle because it is the Achilles heel of a service. If the customer won't use it, we're done. As I mentioned, we did study the best out there and came up with 5 customer-centric design principles: simple, beautiful, complete, predictive, and leading. If you keep these in the forefront of every decision, this will serve as a true north on your journey. As a matter of point, we also have a webinar in our archive file on the website where we covered these and the 5 keys essentially to beautiful service catalogs. So if you want to know more about it, it is out there and you can find it. As you begin creating services, it's also critical that you add some forward-thinking customers as full participants to the services team. I know for many in IT, this is an unnatural act, and it feels like it will be inefficient and take too long. And since we're always in a hurry in IT, that's not a very good feeling. But forward-thinking customers will help keep us aligned against value and make us more efficient and serve as proponents for other customers as we make progress. Our second principle is complete service experience. A complete service experience is end-to-end, start to finish, with consistently high quality. Unfortunately, many past IT service catalog efforts have failed for lack of understanding this. This can come from the thought process of, let's get a customer portal up in a hurry so customers can request IT services there. It is not a reimagining, or maybe even just imagining, of what a service is from the customer's perspective, but really just a request portal for IT actions with no detailed description of a service, its suitability, no pricing, no delivery expectation, nothing the customer would actually use to make a purchase decision. If the experience isn't consistent, high quality end-to-end, the customer will reject it. We can't just make the front page pretty and then drop the ball. It makes customers even angrier. Imagine if you went to Zappos and the buying experience was great until you got to the shopping cart and then it became terrible. You would abandon the cart, and worse, you would not try it again. The heart of success in building complete service experiences is the interplay here between the providers and the customers every step of the way. There's no way it can just be good for one or the other. Both have to benefit. If we go to the grassroots level with our providers, with our people that are concerned about execution effectiveness, and really simplify and improve how we do our work, then we'll love it too, and we will lead the customers to a new way of doing business with us, thereby overcoming the big challenge of change resistance together. This ballet between the customer and provider gets better and better as we work on it. By focusing on the complete service experience, we can also transform IT. Our third principle is to set service expectations and beat them. Any end-to-end service must be accountable. Amazon Prime is 2 days delivery, guaranteed, and the customer doesn't care how it gets done, only that it does. Without visibility into quality and accountability, we're flying blind. I don't care if you call it SLAs or simply delivery. Every service requires a delivery expectation, and then you have to beat it. I realize this is new territory for many. The key is not how fast we can do it, but how reliably we can do it. If we know we can provision a new desktop in 2 weeks at worst case, then we promise delivery in 3. The customer can set their expectations correctly, so when it arrives in 2 weeks, they're pleasantly surprised. While this sounds simple, it can be especially hard for services that touch multiple IT silos with teams that may not be used to specific accountability. But you can't avoid it, or you won't deliver a complete service experience. So the idea here is to start conservatively with targets you know you can meet and share them on a regular basis with the end-to-end team that delivers that service. As they see that data, they will naturally begin to find ways to simplify and speed up the process. It's just human nature. Our 4th principle is have a service portfolio mindset to make better decisions. The service catalog is where your services are offered for sale. The service portfolio is the lifecycle factory of all your services, where they're born, live, and die. You can see that these work together. They're both parts of one solution. We want to build and run a services factory, which we use to manage services over their useful lives. Let's take a look at the flow of work in a factory like this. Excuse me. At the front end, we have to consider what services we want to create, which is our demand or intake funnel. If you're successful, it's quite possible that you will get more requests for new services than you can deliver. Which are most important? Which have the greatest value to the company? How do we communicate this fairly to the customers asking for new services? How do we define value? Is it a balance of customer outcome, cost to create, complexity, and risk? You can see it's important to have a consistent basis for answering these questions and ranking and managing new service requests. Next comes build, where we construct a service. This may sound a little strange. Our goal should be not to build a service rather than build one. The more unique services we have for more and different customers, the more complex our service catalog becomes. This rising complexity can be dangerous. It could make our catalog so difficult to understand and navigate that people stop using it. We want to follow a building block philosophy in constructing services. Start by creating families of simple services which can be reused easily across IT, like objects, managed more simply and combined, like building blocks, to better create more complex services. Then comes modify, where we update or make changes to a service during its useful life. This is fairly self-explanatory. What's important here are the same questions we're asking in build and making sure any modifications go through quality assurance and change control process to validate that we don't break existing functionality people are relying upon. Now, none of that is very unusual for us in IT. Managing service building blocks as CIs, or configuration items, is a good best practice. Last step in the factory is retire, where the service no longer has value and it's removed from our active service catalog. An example of this for some might be a pager provisioning service. Perhaps you don't need this service anymore. Interesting to note, while this service may be retired, it could be made up of a number of services building blocks that are actively in use across the enterprise. It is only this unique combination of these building blocks that is being retired. It is worthwhile to review your services on a regular planned basis, as having a lot of old, not very relevant services makes your catalog harder to navigate and makes it look out of date or not keeping up with the times to your customers. So this brings us to our last principle, which is practice balanced design. We recognize that IT wants to deliver great services that your customers will love. But IT also wants to reduce their complexity, improve efficiency, accuracy, accountability, governance, and speed and quality of service. Both of these can and should be done in concert. To achieve these goals, we follow an approach we call balanced design, involving the customer, the provider, and the manager. If we begin by designing for the customer in a way that they love it and they want to use it, we can also get what we want in execution effectiveness and manageability. With automation of previously manual effort, often driven by the customer's own self-service actions. Give the customer what they want, to get what we need. I'd like to share a simple example of this with you, designed so that the customer's actions automate IT's work. So we built an enterprise application store, and this is the workflow for that store. We can use it to look at the principles of balanced design, right? Say we want to make it easy for our customers to get the software they need. At the highest level, this is a simple solution. Shop, buy, install, and enjoy. We began where the customer enters our application store. We're able to easily search for apps they might need, read descriptions, prices, others' reviews, to help them choose what is best for them. Once decided, they can place it in their shopping cart. So, on the other side of balanced design, IT has no interaction unless there's an issue or the customer needs something that's not found here. Compare this today, where for many, there's time spent explaining what is available, helping the customer understand what is best for them, then manually filling out and placing an order. On checking out, the customer enters their PO or charge code information and gets automated approval right away if the purchase is pre-approved software item, which many are or should be. If approvals are needed, the customer can clearly see what process will be followed to make this happen. Unless there is an issue, again, IT has no involvement. For pre-approved software, the workflow handles it automatically. For software requiring approvals, the workflow routes the request automatically. Once approved, financials are updated, charging the correct cost code. Software asset management is also updated, all without interaction on IT's part. So we get to the install. The customer can now choose how they want to get their software. If their PC is managed with something like SCCM, they'll see that they can self-install with a single push of a button. If not, they can opt to follow a link to a site and download the software themselves. Beyond that, if they want the actual media, they can request it be shipped or they can go pick it up. Once again, IT doesn't have to do anything unless they are manually providing the media. The customer's choices actually automate the work of IT, made possible using the principles of balanced design. So you can ask, does it work? We have a customer with this solution who supports 150,000 customers, serving up to 200 software titles with a staff of 3 people. It's possible because IT is no longer the process. Okay, so now we come to our key takeaways. We hope these will be valued to you as you build or improve your service catalogs. And I've restated the 5 points here on the in the green section. So from a customer-centric standpoint, we want to design services for the customer and we'll be successful. Make the customer an integral permanent part of your service factory team at the start. Never forget, if the customers don't use it, we're going to fail. Complete service experience. Follow a services design philosophy that is end-to-end with the finish as good as the start. Many of this will force you to be more realistic about the true cost of creating a new potential service, and you will naturally pay more attention to making sure any service you create is high value, worth the effort. Set service expectations and beat them. Clearly setting the customer's expectation and meeting or beating it consistently is fundamental to high-quality services. If you ever wonder about this, because it's hard to do, stop, change your mindset, think about your personal experience as a consumer, and then get back to work. You'll know what to do. Have a service portfolio mindset to make better decisions. Build and use the services factory and make sure everyone involved in service delivery understands the factory and why it matters. It'll help them to see their role in the picture. Use building block thinking to simplify and improve your speed and quality in developing new services. And last, practice balanced design. If you're smart and you take your time to think it through, you can design and build services in such a way that the customer, through self-service, actually does a lot of your work for you. This is not optional. You have to do it. Moving IT from a silos to services mentality, and that's what we're talking about here, isn't easy or free. If you do this, you will be able to clearly and definitively prove significant strategic and economic benefit, which will provide funding and authority for your ongoing efforts. Okay, so that's about all I have to cover today under the 5 core principles. Thank you for listening. I'm now going to turn it over to Jeff Benedict, and he's going to walk through sort of a high-level demonstration of our latest efforts in our user-centric service catalog.
Great, thanks, Don. Appreciate that. So, before I jump into ServiceNow and show you some of the things we've built on the platform, let me just take one slide to kind of cover some of the principles that go into our solutions. This particular slide is a little bit geared towards those ServiceNow technical folks out there. Here's kind of some of the guiding principles and goals that we use whenever we build these kind of content management systems, self-service portals, or kind of that customer experience side of the equation. First and foremost, we do want to follow best practices, and these are provided by the community, ServiceNow, and things that we see in our history and practice of delivering solutions. And some of the examples here are using things like system properties to drive kind of switches or settings, using things like message records within ServiceNow to allow for localization to different languages. Also, having a responsive website is now an expectation. It used to be more of a nice-to-have kind of feature. And this means having one site that is usable on desktops, laptops, but also on smaller displays such as smartphones and tablets. Much of this does not come out of the box with ServiceNow CMS portals. It needs to be kind of factored into the solution as well as thoroughly tested. Third point here, a lot of the ServiceNow out-of-the-box CMS site uses iframes for lists and forms, which create difficulty from a web development perspective. For example, navigation occurs within the frame when you're using iframes, and getting your goal of a responsive site will be much more challenging with iframes. Last point here, we want to ensure our solution will upgrade with you cleanly. And as such, it's not our goal to alter any ServiceNow authored code, but rather, where necessary, copy that code and create our own versions. This particularly comes into play with things like some of the catalog item display, the display of carts, where there's there's a desire to have some unique perspective, but to get there, we would need to kind of copy some of the out-of-the-box macros and kind of tweak them to our needs. All right, so let me jump in and show you one of our example portals. So this is one that we built. It's kind of got a Windows Metro style layout and uses some indicators to kind of highlight records that the user has, like some badges up here in terms of the tickets that types. Also, there's some effects as you roll over different elements that will show you more details about kind of the options or the selections or the tiles that I can click on. Also, this side, as I mentioned, responsive. This is a responsive layout, so if I get to the mobile iPhone display, you'll notice it kind of reshapes the content to match that display. Further, it's using what's called an off-canvas menu, very common in the web technologies or mobile display kind of environments. It's also worth noting that this site has kind of some binding to swipes and behaviors. So if I swipe left, for example, I get my menu. Same thing for some of the things like the search. The other thing is worth noting here is that there is some broadcast of or promotion of news articles kind of through the scrolling headlines here, as well as any announcements related to outages or alerts kind of come to the forefront for the user. The other thing I want to show is I want to show this same perspective, this same kind of page if I'm not logged in. I still can consume a lot of that information. I can consume my knowledge information. I can consume the outages and alerts. The other thing that's happened here, even though I'm not logged into this particular session on this particular browser, is it still remembered who I was from a previous login, so it's able to show me kind of my ticket counts and information about kind of who I am and things I care about. But as soon as I go to log in or try to go to see more details of a particular record, I'm going to be kind of prompted to actually perform a login before I get to those particular pages. And this is similar to, for those of you who've used things like Amazon sites, similar kind of behavior in that it remembers that you were logged in, so it can still kind of show you your perspective, your details, but once you go to order something, you need to actually authenticate to get further. Go to the Get Help page here. So, you know, as a customer, I'm looking at the portal to get help to both empower me for my job function. And in this page, I can either ask for help through a submission form, or I can seek answers myself. So I might go look for answers through the popular articles, or I can do kind of a quick search for, in this case, maybe some settings. And this will show me a knowledge article related to Windows XP and some of the settings. One thing worth noting here too, again, this is a responsive page. So this article is going to display cleanly on a mobile device, and some of the additional information like the feedback and search things are going to kind of stack underneath the actual article details. You know, much of the power of any IT customer portal comes from kind of that shopping cart where the customer can request goods and services. The shopping experience here starts with navigating through different service categories. So I can go into something like employee events, maybe go to name change. I could add this to my cart. I can go continue shopping, and maybe I want to add like a tablet to an iPhone to my, or an iPad to my order. I can come out here to an iPad. I can add that, and ultimately I can go proceed to checkout. On this page, I'm going to get kind of a summary of what I'm ordering, kind of any costs that are associated with this, and then provide additional business reasons. And then I can place my order. And then I get kind of a receipt. And those become my individual items that will be fulfilled on my behalf. The other way I can go and consume and find information is obviously through a search kind of model. The way the search is set up, it's very similar to your hotels.com or kayak kind of sites where you get all your results and you can kind of filter them from there. So I can look for, say I want to kind of filter by these different categories. I'm getting kind of my knowledge articles, catalog items. I can also disable an entire record set and get my specific, particular catalog items to order in this case, based off of Word, email, and the different categories that I've selected. Also notice that as I search, it's keeping history of my recent searches, so I can kind of recall a previous search and find those results, and kind of have a history of things that I commonly look for kind of stored on my behalf. Go to the knowledge page. So on this page, we've got kind of a summary of knowledge articles based off of different topics. And I think the thing worth noting on this is the actual display of knowledge articles is in the same perspective as the search was. And this is kind of a common tactic where we want to deliver a consistent way to browse and search for items, making it easier on the user in that they see data and records kind of in a similar common model as they navigate throughout their experience. One thing to note here, behind this particular search as well as the browse, there is a kind of an API, a REST-based API for doing the searches and retrieval of data. And I bring this up because this means that both our portal can consume data from ServiceNow in an easy, consumable manner, but also can mean that you could expose this information to an intranet or some other site out there where you want to list your knowledge articles or catalog items to be requested. So on our status page, this would be where we go to check the status of our various requests. And my options here is I can kind of similar as my search, I can kind of take my list and I can filter it based off of my different ticket types. So I can look for my incidents or my requests, or I can kind of do a combination of those records. I can also toggle my open and closed records. The other things I have at my disposal here is you'll notice that I have some actions that I can perform. I can view the details, I can cancel my incident requests, I can also provide some updates. Maybe this particular incident, I need to provide some feedback back to fulfiller as to kind of some inputs to help progress further. Maybe still having an issue on Oracle 11G. Right, so I can provide an update. Which is going to update my incident with those with my comments, provide some notice to that fulfiller as to what's going on, and now my most recently updated record kind of shows up at the top. Further, as the particular incident or request has been completed, it's kind of prompting me for confirming whether or not this is indeed resolved or closed. So I can come in here and say, no, I'm not satisfied, and it will reopen my particular incident. Or if I say I am satisfied, then I'm going to be basically acknowledging that my particular ticket is confirmed and closed and no longer shows up in my active list of tickets as well. The other thing I wanted to share, just kind of behind the scenes, just to understand a bit about this portal and kind of how we approach design of these, is we are leveraging a common set of properties to kind of turn on and off switch. There are tables for defining what are the different sources of information to be searched and how the results should come back, as well as kind of the status screen, how the different tickets should display, and the columns that should display within there, as well as our home page. Our navigation tiles are all defined in a table. It makes it easy to kind of configure, adjust, tweak to match our specific needs. And I bring this up mostly to highlight the fact that our solution is configurable by nature, and this is how we obviously we approach any of these particular solutions. So that kind of covered what I wanted to cover as far as the portal. Let me also cover in here, one point of kind of balanced design of setting expectations and delivering on those expectations. And I want to take a closer look at, leveraging ServiceNow to drive kind of the delivery or the orchestration of a request. I'm going to use onboarding as an example, but so I'm going to request a new onboard or a new employee to be added to our organization and kind of show you the workflow that's behind this. So I can come to something like an onboarding request. Right, I can put in, I'll just put a generic name here. The thing to know with this is from the perspective of either an HR individual or a hiring manager. So you'll notice there's not any real IT particulars here, right? My consumer is somebody who's just hired a new employee or is the hiring manager. So I can come in and fill in information that's relevant to kind of what would be on an offer sheet, with the exception of we probably already had an employee ID generated in an HR system. So as I go to order this, I'll go to my status screen. And there's kind of, so my overall request has some pending approval, some provisioning access, equipment provisioning. I'm also setting expectations as to when can I expect this particular full end-to-end orchestrated employee onboarding request to be completed. I'm getting an expected delivery date here, of 12/22. The other thing is I actually set myself as the approver or the hiring manager of this particular request, so it actually got routed to me also to do an approval. So if I were to look at just my approvals, I would see here's my new request to approve this particular new hire. So I can come in here and do my approval. Let it refresh. And now if I go look at my request and I show you the workflow, I'll show you where this whole thing kind of goes end to end. So it had my onboarding request. This is all one request that's orchestrating all the different activities that need to happen for my new employee. First of all, we had some authorization up front. That was my approval. And then we're going out and we're doing some automation. We're creating a new account for them in our various systems. We're reaching out into Active Directory, creating an account for the user, adding them to the appropriate groups and profiles. We're also going and having some conditional work based off of whether this is an employee or a contractor. If they're an employee, we're going to order some equipment for them. If they're an office employee, then we're also going to do some office setup related tasks. So there's kind of one workflow to cover the different variables and conditions of this process. And let me kind of take this a step further. So behind this whole process and this is a means by which to kind of drive that consistent delivery, we have kind of a standard or a profile established for our different types of employees. So for example, the new employee that we just added, with somebody in the sales department and the sales executive. And what we're defining in these records is we're saying if you're a sales executive in the sales department, this is your specific equipment that we're going to assign to you as a standard. Further, here's the actual Active Directory groups we're going to provision access for or provision your account into, which may drive additional access or provisioning to different systems. So in essence, we're driving kind of a standard that allows for a kind of quicker way to deliver and set up those activities for the individual. So here's our request that we just submitted. And the part I wanted to show next is on the equipment side of it. So we basically said this is a new employee that we're hiring. This is all the equipment they need based off of that standard. Now, as a hiring manager, I can come in and make some alterations or adjustments, but this is kind of the standard. The other thing that's happening here is you'll notice one of the items was automatically assigned to the individual based off of it being in an available stock room. So this is also another kind of, I guess, tactic. If something like procurement or equipment provisioning part of the workflow is the long pole in the tent, then you might want to look at using things like stockroom or having inventory on hand to help speed up that particular process and having some replenishment of that stock to drive that overall activities. But the rest of this, I can go and order the rest of the equipment here that needs to be ordered, moves it into an ordering state, would generate a purchase order with our vendor, and then once we receive the equipment that we need to receive, we can kind of go in and receive the individual items. For things that are actual serialized or assets, we need to kind of start that asset tag process. So I'll put a serial number in for the item that I'm receiving. And based off of completing the full receipt of our equipment, our actual task to procure the equipment has now been completed and closed. And we've created 5 different assets and associated them to our new employees. So we're kind of orchestrating both the delivery of activities to the end user, but also from that balanced design perspective, we're capturing our assets so we can manage what individuals own and who actually is using what pieces of equipment, which helps our management, helps our accounting, helps our licensing activities going forward as well. Let me refresh this workflow just to kind of show you where it's at. So in lieu of going through all the different activities, but you'll see obviously there's tasks here to do the security badge, to assign offices. I'll just kind of skip over those and show you kind of a completed request, kind of show you the end state of this particular onboarding process. So I created one of these earlier today, and let's go to, this one was closed and complete. The end result is you end up with a request that's gone through all the stages. We've got an assigned, in essence, network, AD, Active Directory-based login. We've got a phone number that was assigned through that work activities. We've assigned the equipment to the individual, and we're kind of providing this as an overall summary report to them, to both the hiring manager and the employee as to here's your equipment, here's your location, here are the tasks that were completed on your behalf, and you're, in essence, ready to get going and work in our environment. So hopefully that was informative and helps you kind of see the power of ServiceNow in terms of orchestrating, more complicated workflows within your organization, such as onboarding, but obviously can extend to other things as well.
Okay, hey, thanks very much, Jeff. As a long-time Redskins fan, I'm really pleased to see that we finally got Tony Romo on board. If you found this interesting and wonder what might be a logical next step, here are a couple options for you. If you have any interest at all in the Advanced Service Catalog solution like what we've presented today, it is available as a ServiceNow update set for only $15,000. Perhaps you would like a deeper dive demo for you and your team. If there is any interest in it, we'd be happy to help you. Or perhaps you are considering a broader Service Catalog initiative, but maybe aren't sure where to start, how to get your team all on the same page. We do offer a one-day private Service Catalog workshop on your site, which educates your team, uncovers your key business drivers, and creates a logical roadmap for going forward. You can truly actually save months of effort in consensus building and get your program moving faster. Best of all, it is only $3,950, which barely covers the cost of travel. So those are, like I said, those are a couple of things that you could consider as next steps. So now we've got a few minutes left. We can open it up for any questions that we may have gotten in, Stephanie, while we were presenting.
Sure. This first one's for Jeff. Jeff, the question is, would we need an orchestration license in order to do that same onboarding workflow that you just showed?
I mean, to do it exactly as I showed it, the answer would be yes, because as I indicated, that part of that workflow had reaching out into Active Directory and assigning group memberships and creating accounts. Though without the orchestration license, you could do integrations to Active Directory via web services or through some other means. But even without that, I mean, there's still value in orchestrating kind of like the onboarding and the human, I guess the onboarding workflow and chaining together those human tasks, even if you're not reducing or if you're not removing the actual humans out of the equation. We see lots of value with things like onboarding because I feel, in a lot of cases it's kind of breaking down some of the silos that tend to exist in a lot of organizations. If you think of the onboarding process, you got IT, you got HR, you got finance, facilities, and security. So there's a lot of value, even if you're not automating the work, a lot of value in just bringing all those organizations into one kind of seamless process.
Okay, great. Jeff, another one for you. Will the CMS self-service portal work on Eureka?
Yes. So we built the portal originally on Calgary, and we kind of iterated and updated it since. We have tested and validated on both Dublin and Eureka. There are a few kind of, I guess, minor adjustments, tweaks we need to make when on applying it to Eureka. Specifically, there is kind of some new features, the new UI of Eureka, as well as the multiple catalogs, add a couple of different styles and some ways to direct the shopping cart. But all in all, it's pretty easy to apply into a Eureka environment.
Okay, great. Jeff, Susan has a follow-up question to the first question about the orchestration license. How much does the orchestration license cost?
Oh, that's a good question. It's probably where we need to put you in touch with the ServiceNow sales rep in terms of specific pricing. Typically it's done by kind of the number of nodes you're going to connect to, but I can't provide, I guess, the specifics offhand. Something I have to follow up on and connect her with their ServiceNow sales rep to give specific pricing.
Yeah, we'll be happy to follow up on that question.
There's two ways to price the ServiceNow orchestration piece. There's the orchestration core piece, and then, like Jeff indicated, there's a price per device. I think the list right now on the core piece is $2,500 a month.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jason, for clarifying that. Jeff, one more for you. How long does it take to set up a new CMS site?
It's probably a typical consultant answer. It can vary. In terms of dropping kind of this metro-style framework, this can occur in a day. And we've had a lot of customers that will start with that and kind of drop in and adjust the styles, the headers, and some of the common buttons, and we're up and going very quickly. But a lot depends on, I guess, the number of style adjustments, how much it needs to blend and conform with other sites, as well as whether there's different use cases we need to factor into the account or the equation. In general, most of our CMS projects, span as quickly as a couple of weeks to some that are as long as a couple of months.
Thanks, Jeff. Going to move over to some questions, probably more for Don here, this first one. If we get end customers involved in service design, I have some concern that they'll ask for the moon and get too deep into design decisions that can't possibly be delivered. How do you control that?
That's a common question we get, actually, in this area. The idea behind it is we want the customer involved in helping define what outcomes they need and why those outcomes are valuable to them, as well as what isn't valuable, but not necessarily how we go about delivering this. Once we have a draft design, or it could be the first iteration of an agile prototype even, then we're going to review it with them and see if it does deliver the outcomes they defined and adjust accordingly, as they refine that message. But they're not actually doing the service design activities. And this kind of helps keep the work inside the fence, keep it under control from a scope perspective.
Okay, thanks, Don. Another question. Balanced design seems like a good way to get funding and executive support for ongoing services strategy. How easy is it to prove strategic and economic value?
Well, it's pretty straightforward, actually. For example, any service that you re-engineer and automate, you can perform a simple baseline on time to deliver, actual work hours to deliver, and quality of the outcome. Then, once implemented, we can go back and measure work hours saved, which is an economic measure, reduction in time to deliver service, and customer satisfaction or quality. So, in my experience, service quality, speed of service, and better aligning with the customer and consistency of delivery are pretty much considered strategic IT infrastructure goals by most, if not all IT executives. So the short answer is it's really not all that hard to do.
Thanks, Don. The Services Factory is an interesting way to think about portfolio. Would you consider doing a webinar devoted to a deeper dive on this topic?
Yeah, we agree on that. It's been something that we've got on our list, and I think it's a really good topic that hasn't gotten a lot of coverage. It is already, something that'll probably happen in Q1. So, yeah, thank you for that feedback, but we like it as well.
Okay, great. Let's see. I think I covered all the questions. One last call if anyone has any questions to send over. Also, a reminder, I will be sending an email out no later than tomorrow with a link to download this recording and the slides from today. As I mentioned at the start, we will be doing some updates on our website for the next day or two. So if I moved anything on you and you can't find it, please just send me an email at marketing@evergreensys.com and I'll point you in the right direction. And I don't see any more questions, so I want to thank you all for your time. Enjoy your holiday season, and we will be sending info out on our webinar series that starts up again in January. Thanks again.